Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, plain and simple study verse by verse and chapter by chapter and book by book through the entire Bible. We are in Genesis chapter 1, the first book of the Bible. And again, just by way of reminder, doing this slow crawl through the first 11 chapters. There's so much to unpack. So that's why if it seems like I am taking my time, that is the reason why. It's because there's so much to unpack. And we're talking about the age of the earth. Genesis verses 1. I'm going to go back to there because, again, we're talking about how old is the earth. Now, I only say that is because you, as a Christian, may encounter the question or the argument or the debate. So one of the, I think, mistakes that some have made is trying to answer questions that the Bible doesn't answer or deal with. And the reason why, again, let me say, the Bible was never meant to be a science book, a history book from the standpoint of telling the whole history or details to the history. It only shares what is pertinent to God's plan and purpose for man. That's it. So with that, then, but the Bible understanding, let's go to John again, Genesis chapter 1. It says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Here is the thing. He doesn't tell us how. He just makes the proclamation, God created the heavens and the earth. So that's what I mean, that God wasn't concerned or didn't concern with giving us the details. We know by science how to explain a lot. And as I said before, there is no scientific claim that disproves the claims of the Bible. So, so if we're gonna comparing like evolution from the standpoint of God's proclamation that He created the heavens and the earth, there's no conflict really. Only in the sense of the origins. So when people say, well, the Big Bang, and then their conclusion is and that God did not create it, that natural processes happened. Well, they can't prove that, right? They can't even prove a Big Bang. It's still the evolutionary theory remains a theory. It is a theory that they may believe. As one astrophysicist said, that there's enough out there that they believe we got enough to say that this happened, but you will never hear them say it is a fact. Gravity is a fact. The speed of light is a fact. And so as it with other scientific facts, evolution is not a fact. It is a theory. All right. Now, on the other hand, understand that the Bible was never meant to say, let me debate scientists, astrophysicists, anthropologists. That's not the purpose of the Bible. and I'm going to get into some of this today so that we can understand what God is saying. And then one of the problems is trying to say, let's convince the world through scientific arguments and debates. No, that you can't prove the claims of the Bible. So, for example, you cannot prove Genesis verse 1 here, chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. You can't prove that. The Bible is a book of faith. I believe the claims of the Bible wholeheartedly. And I don't believe the Bible's claims through blind faith. Science have not offered any evidence to disprove God's claims. So think about that. If you say that, and they do, that the earth from natural processes that happen. And of course you go back to, well, so the elements, and again, I'm not going to go back and rehash that. But the very beginning, then you look at the formation of man. Say again, we're going to come to in Genesis chapter 2, obviously. Well, actually, verse 26 in the first chapter, we have come to the claim that God created man. So, all right, here's the other thing we need to understand, that so the fact that God did not give us details, we kind of know some basic facts of biology. But you cannot say, okay, like in my case, I had a mother and a father. We know that for a fact. I couldn't even, can I prove my mother and father? Well, the answer is in some places yes, right? With DNA, blood types. But you keep going back, and keep going back. Where did it begin? Science can't prove we crawled out of the water or we started from goo. That to me, one of the most silliest arguments. I'm jumping ahead, but I wanted to kind of concentrate on just the kind of the timing. And one of the interesting things about science is that the timing is most important to them. And one of the things interesting that if you just give it 14 billion years, out comes the universe in its complexity. Well, why do I say complexity? Just look at life. Look at your body itself, right? But look at all of the complex life. But even though there's not complex life on any other planets, you have complexity in that order. When you think about the universe, the billions of stars, the millions of galaxies, okay, that a explosion, which in any other example causes chaos and destruction, they say in this case calls life and order. All right, so the age, when we talk about the age, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Let me just say, the Bible doesn't tell us. God did not give us the details. We don't know when God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the other interesting thing about this is that in the verse 1, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then it says, now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the water. So what you have is the first proclamation, God created the heavens and the earth, and then it says, and then we immediately are going to concentrate on the present form of the heavens and the earth. Let me just say this. As far as the age of the earth is concerned, you cannot answer that because God did not give the answer. Now, do I believe in the carbon dating methods? Therefore, you see these numbers that people throw out, right? 26 million years ago, the earth was this way, and 100,000 years ago, the earth was that way. Well, think about this. You can always throw out a number. I can't prove or disprove it, right? They can't prove or disprove it. They weren't around 100,000 years ago. They weren't around 26 million years ago. And since I'm not a scientist, it would be foolish of me to try to then contradict what they say. We would rely on other Christian scientists, those of goodwill, who are versed in those that have given themselves over to those studies, right, to be able to contradict and to be able to better argue the methods of carbon dating, right? Again, it would be foolish for me to. Do I believe all of it? Not really. Now, again, when we talk about the age of the earth, and then you say, well, the age of the earth, then again, the Bible itself doesn't give us an age. All right. So Christians who try to then argue, and there is much debate, and I'm for good, healthy debate, but no, you start off with the fact that you cannot say definitively any number. That's my point. Now, I do think that there are certain Christians who try to kind of meet science halfway, and that's what I want to kind of concentrate on today, in that to talk about what is called the gap theory, and then how sometimes they arrive at that. Okay, and again, the motive is, let's try to meet science halfway. So traditionally, most of the time we have been taught that the earth was only 6,000 years ago. In other words, that all of these events here in Genesis chapter 1, we're only talking 6,000 years. Now, science will definitively say we know that is not true. Okay. And here's my thing. Well, the Bible doesn't give us a number. Now, there are also other Christians who come along and says, well, we kind of agree with science and say, well, the earth is much older, and we really cannot tell. We can't, to say that the earth is only 6,000 years old would be a stretch to them. And so we know that what they would try to say is one method, and forgive me for I'm going to poorly represent this. In other words, there are better explanations of this, but one of the things is, as scientists, is looking at light spectrums. And again, these are kind of guesstimations. So if you look at a star, for example, and you say, well, a star kind of emits this kind of brightness, right? Then you see another star and it emits another kind of brightness. Then they try to say, based upon some of the spectrums there, you could say either how the earth is, the star, I should say, emitting the light is closer or farther. But you're still dealing with, and my point is, and again, I admit, by the way, I'm no scientist, and I'm not, that can be an extremely poor representation of what they say. But what I'm going to say is that whatever it is they still come up with a guesstimation of the numbers. Numbers you cannot, in a sense, prove. So, for example, they know that light travels at 186,000 miles per second. So you can just kind of, if you just do a calculator and do math, that's why they measure light in light years. But if you just do a measurement and just like the speed at which light travels in just 1 minute, then an hour, then days, then years, you say, well, how long has this light been traveled? But then, of course, how is this light going to appear? You get into fascinating kind of studies, thoughts too, that, well, okay, so if a light that's been traveling 5 years, it takes 5 years to reach us. So by the time we see the light, that star could already been out, right? Been destroyed or whatever. Interesting thoughts. So my point is, so astrophysics and all that kind of stuff, they get into those kind of thoughts. But there are other kind of thoughts that you can kind of look at as well. I use the example of Adam. That if you examine Adam 2 days after that God breathed into his nostrils, then you would say, well, okay, Adam is a fully adult male, and then you compare that to how long did it take for me to grow up, right? 18 years. And then if you want to say fully formed, fully formed, 21, 23, 25, whatever, You would say that Adam was a male of about 25 years old, but yet he was only 2 days old. In other words, so life started when God started it, is my point. So there's another issue about what's called day-age, or the gap theory, and this, I want to look at it and say the main problem with it is the motive. It's just, let's try to meet science halfway. And so basically what they say is, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Gap, verse 2. Now the earth was formless. So what they try to say is that you see the first statement in verse 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and then you come to verse 2, and then they say there's a gap, and then that gap kind of helps us with science. So you can explain the millions of years that science say the universe has been around. And again, there are other ways of explaining it. However, I think, and my thing is, I don't think you should ever try to find a happy medium, because they don't care. Read the 3rd chapter, and that will explain why they don't care. Now, if your scientific findings find, that we can explain, that we can conclude that certainly the earth is older than 6,000 years, so be it. There's no conflict here. Remember, Genesis 1 is not a science recounting of creation. It is a proclamation that God created the heavens and the earth. He doesn't give a number. So and that's again one of the things that if we just eliminate the motive of why they're saying what they're saying, if we eliminate that motive, then my point is, it doesn't matter. Really, it doesn't matter how old the earth is. Doesn't matter, because even if scientists is right that the universe is 14 billion years old, it doesn't matter to the biblical narrative. Now, it does to certain theology, because it means your theology is wrong. I'm saying biblically, you never ever had the grounds to make the kind of proclamation that the earth was only 6,000 years in the first place. My point is, God is not giving a time. That's the biggest takeaway here. God is not giving a time. So then there are people who are giving what's called, they go into the Hebrew words, and they try to say, well, there's what's called day ages. And so what's called the day ages versus the 24-hour days. Which is which, right? And you get into those kind of debates. Now, I'll unpack that in the next study. But my point in terms of the age, just remember, God doesn't give us a number, right? Genesis 1 doesn't give us a number. It just says God created the heavens and the earth. My faith is, I believe what God said. He created the heavens and the earth. There is nothing to science, and I'm saying this with an open mind, saying, show me the evidence. There is no scientific evidence that says that my belief is just mere myth. That science has concluded and proven there is no God, and certainly the claims of Genesis 1:1. There is none. All right, guys, we're going to continue in the next study. So, excuse me, I will see you in the next study. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.